We are standing in the most critical hour of history. The world around us is trembling. Nations are shaking. Economies are collapsing. Morality is being redefined, and truth is being trampled underfoot. This is not just another moment in time. It is a turning point, a moment when destinies are decided, when light and darkness collide, and when each of us must choose which side we will stand on. Throughout the ages, there have always been defining moments, moments when the course of humanity could shift in one direction or the other. But this hour is unlike any before it. The forces that once hid in the shadows now parade openly in the streets. The lines between right and wrong, holy and profane, good and evil, are no longer blurred. They are being deliberately erased. What was once called sin is now celebrated. What was once honored is now despised. What was once sacred is now mocked. This is the hour when the foundations are being tested. Families are under attack, faith is ridiculed, and nations are spiraling into confusion. And yet, it is precisely in such an hour that those who are rooted in truth are called to rise. This is not the time to retreat, not the time to hide, not the time to bow to fear. It is the time to stand with courage, to speak with boldness, to live with holiness, and to shine with the light of heaven in a world that has embraced darkness. Every generation faces trials, but not every generation stands at the threshold of history. We have been placed here not by accident, but by divine appointment. You are not alive in this hour by chance. You are here because heaven ordained that you would stand in the midst of this moment and carry a purpose that only you can fulfill. If you remain silent now, if you compromise now, then the darkness will advance unchecked. But if you rise, if you take your place, if you live as one who has been called for such a time as this, then the hour of shaking can also become the hour of awakening. Do not underestimate the power of your faith, your prayers, your obedience. History is not ultimately shaped by kings or governments, but by those who bow their knees before God and refuse to be moved by the threats of men. One act of faith can change the destiny of a people. One prayer can open the floodgates of heaven. One stand for truth can spark a fire that spreads across generations. Yes, the hour is critical, but that is why it is also sacred. The darkness is strong, but the light is stronger. The battle is fierce, but the victory belongs to those who endure. You are standing in the most critical hour, not to be defeated, but to overcome. Not to be crushed, but to rise. Not to live in fear, but to live in faith. For the one who called you is greater than the world against you. The hour is critical, but the calling is clear. Stand firm, lift your head, and be the light. The world is in a defining moment where truth and morality are under attack, and choices made now will shape the future. There have always been times in history when civilizations reach crossroads, moments when the direction taken determined not just years, but generations, even centuries to come. And we are living in such a moment right now. The signs are everywhere. The foundations of morality, the pillars of what once held societies together, are cracking before our very eyes. What was once regarded as unquestionable truth is now dismissed as outdated, intolerant, or oppressive. And what was once recognized as darkness is now embraced as light. We are watching the unraveling of standards that have guided humanity for ages, and this unraveling is not by accident. It is intentional, it is aggressive, and it is relentless. When truth is attacked, everything becomes unstable, because truth is the foundation of life. Without truth, there is no justice, no order, no freedom, no lasting peace. A society that rejects truth inevitably falls into chaos, confusion, and destruction. That is what we see unfolding across the world today. People are redefining morality to suit their desires. What was once shameful is now celebrated. What was once sacred is now mocked. The very essence of right and wrong has been turned upside down. And in this moment, the choices we make, whether we stand for truth or bow to deception, will determine the course of the future. Everywhere we look, there are battles raging over the soul of humanity. In schools, Children are being taught ideologies that strip them of innocence and distort their sense of identity. In media, lies are disguised as truth, and people are conditioned to accept the narrative without question. In governments, corruption runs rampant as leaders pursue power rather than righteousness. In culture, entertainment glorifies violence, lust, greed, and rebellion while ridiculing purity, humility, and faith. This is not merely cultural drift. It is an orchestrated assault on the moral compass of mankind. And when the compass is broken, the ship is destined for shipwreck. But this is more than just the decay of society. It is a spiritual war. Behind the confusion and corruption lies a force that has sought from the beginning to twist truth and lead humanity into bondage. The battle we are witnessing is not just political, not just social, not just cultural. It is spiritual. And in this war, neutrality is impossible. Every person must choose which side they will stand on. To remain silent is to consent to the advance of darkness. To compromise is to strengthen the hand of deception. That is why this moment is critical. The choices we make now are not temporary, they are eternal. They will shape not only our lives, but the destiny of those who come after us. History testifies of what happens when nations abandon truth. Empires rise to great power, but when they reject the moral foundation that sustains them, they collapse from within. The fall of Rome, the decline of civilizations, the destruction of kingdoms, all serve as warnings. Wealth, military might, and influence could not preserve them when truth and morality were discarded. And the same pattern is being replayed in our time. The signs of decline are visible: division, corruption, lawlessness, violence, and confusion. The question is not whether the world is standing in a critical hour. The question is whether we will recognize it and respond with courage. In such a moment, compromise is tempting. Many would rather remain comfortable than confront the lies of the age. But silence in the face of deception is itself a form of betrayal. If truth is not defended, it will be trampled. If righteousness is not lifted up, wickedness will prevail. And yet, even as the forces of darkness seem overwhelming, there remains a calling on those who know the truth. It is not enough to simply lament the state of the world. We are called to take a stand. We are called to live in such a way that truth is not only spoken but embodied. The light must not only be declared, it must shine through our lives. Consider the weight of this moment. Generations to come will look back on our choices. They will either see a people who cowered in fear, who blended into the culture, who chose comfort over conviction, or they will see a people who rose with courage, who stood against the tide, who clung to truth even when it cost them everything. Every decision we make, every word we speak, every stand we take carries more significance than we realize. A single act of courage can inspire others. A single voice raised in truth can break through the fog of lies. A single life lived in integrity can ripple through generations. But understand, this truth is not defined by opinion or shaped by culture. Truth is unchanging, eternal, and absolute. It stands regardless of whether it is accepted or rejected. What has changed is not truth itself, but humanity's willingness to honor it. And when a generation turns its back on truth, it is not truth that falls. It is the generation itself. This is why the choices we make now matter so deeply. To embrace deception is to choose destruction. To stand on truth is to choose life, even when it means standing alone. There is a cost to standing for truth in this hour. It will not make you popular. It will not win the applause of the world. It may bring opposition, ridicule, or even persecution. But there is a far greater cost in surrendering truth. When truth is abandoned, souls are lost, destinies are destroyed, and nations are led into ruin. The weight of compromise is heavier than the weight of persecution. The burden of silence is greater than the burden of speaking up. The consequences of choosing deception are far more devastating than the price of standing firm. And yet, even in the midst of the shaking, there is hope. For throughout history, the darkest hours have often been the moments when light shone the brightest. In times when truth was silenced, There arose men and women who refused to bow. In times when morality collapsed, there were those who lived with integrity and turned the tide. And so it can be again. But it depends on the choices we make in this hour. Will we hide or will we rise? Will we blend into the darkness or will we shine as light? Will we follow the crowd or will we walk the narrow path of truth? This is not simply about surviving the times we live in. It is about shaping the times to come. The choices we make now will either pave the way for greater darkness or prepare the ground for awakening. If we stand firm, if we hold to truth, if we live with conviction, then even in the midst of crisis, seeds of transformation can be planted. And those seeds, though small, can grow into a movement that outlives us and impacts generations. We must therefore live with urgency, knowing that the hour is critical. Time is not to be wasted on trivial pursuits, empty distractions, or self-serving ambitions. The stakes are too high, the moment too urgent. The world is watching, history is recording, and heaven is calling. What we do now, how we choose now, will echo through eternity. We are not spectators of history, we are participants in it. The pen is in our hands, and the story we write will be read by those who come after us. Yes, the world is in a defining moment. Truth and morality are under attack. But this is not a moment to despair. It is a moment to decide. It is not a time to shrink back. It is a time to step forward. The hour is critical, and the choices we make now will shape the future. The question is not whether the world will change. It already is. The question is whether we will change with it or stand against it. For those who stand, who live with courage, who refuse to compromise, will not only endure this hour, they will define it. This generation has been divinely appointed to live in this critical hour with a purpose unique to each individual. Nothing about your existence is accidental. The place where you were born, the time in which you live, the family you came through, the talents you possess, and even the struggles you endure have all been woven into a tapestry by divine design. You are not alive in this age of shaking and turmoil by chance. You are here because you were chosen for it. Just as every piece of a puzzle has a precise place, so too your life has been placed in this exact moment in history to fulfill a role that no one else can. Throughout the centuries, there were generations that witnessed peace and prosperity, and there were those that faced turmoil and upheaval. But the generation that stands in the most critical hour carries a weight unlike any other. It is the generation that must decide whether truth will be preserved or lost, whether righteousness will rise or fall, whether darkness will overtake the land, or whether light will shine through the cracks. And that generation is us. We are not spectators watching history unfold from a safe distance. We are the participants chosen to carry the burden and responsibility of this decisive moment. Think about it, of all the billions of people who have lived and all the ages that have passed. It is you who were chosen to breathe in this hour. That alone means your life carries weight beyond measure. You have been entrusted with a purpose that no other time could contain. If you had been born in another century, your assignment would have been different. But you are here now because the call on your life is fitted for this time. The darkness of the world does not negate your purpose. It confirms it. The shaking of nations does not mean you were born in the wrong time. It means you were born for such a time. When a craftsman shapes a tool, he designs it for a specific task. A hammer is not made to cut wood, and a saw is not made to drive nails. In the same way, your life has been formed with precision to accomplish a purpose that fits the unique challenges of this generation. That purpose may not look like another person's calling. It may not be celebrated by the world or recognized by crowds. But it is necessary. The kingdom of heaven has ordained that your presence in this hour matters. You carry an assignment that has eternal weight. And if you do not fulfill it, no one else can fulfill it in the same way. Many people look at the state of the world and wonder why they were born in such troubled times. They long for easier days, for calmer years, for simpler challenges. But the truth is that the greatest callings are often reserved for the hardest times. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Warriors are forged in battle. Heroes rise in the face of danger. And those who are chosen for the most critical hour are entrusted with the greatest potential to bring change. If you find yourself overwhelmed by the chaos of the times, remember that your very presence in this hour is evidence of your divine appointment. You were not born to run from the storm. You were born to face it. Your life is not random. The talents you carry, the passions that stir your heart, the burdens that weigh upon your spirit, all of these are clues to your purpose. Some are called to speak, some to serve, some to lead, some to create, some to pray, some to build, some to heal, some to guide. The diversity of callings is what makes a generation strong. Just as a body is made of many parts, each with its own function, so too this generation is made up of individuals with unique assignments. If even one part fails to fulfill its role, the body suffers. In the same way, if you neglect your purpose, the generation loses something vital. The enemy of your soul knows this, which is why he wages war against your identity. If he can convince you that your life is meaningless, that your purpose is insignificant, that your voice doesn't matter, then he can silence you before you even begin. But the truth is the opposite. Your life is infused with eternal significance. Your obedience, your faith, your persistence, even in the small things, can set in motion a chain of events that affects countless others. You may never see the full impact of your calling in this life, but heaven sees, and heaven measures, and heaven uses even the smallest act of faith to shift the course of history. Consider the great figures of the past. Many of them did not realize in the moment how critical their choices were. A shepherd boy in a field could not have known he would one day face a giant and change the destiny of his people. A young woman in obscurity could not have known that her courage would preserve her nation. A fisherman by the sea could not have known that his decision to follow a voice would alter the course of the world. The same is true for you. What may seem small, hidden, or ordinary in your life may actually be the very act of obedience that carries eternal weight. This is why you cannot waste your time, your gifts, or your opportunities. Too much is at stake. Every day you are alive in this critical hour is another day you are called to live with purpose. Do not wait for tomorrow. Do not delay for a more convenient season. Do not believe the lie that your purpose will unfold without your participation. The time is now. The call is now. The responsibility is now. You have been entrusted with a portion of this generation's destiny, and what you do with it matters. Yes, the times are hard. Yes, the darkness is deep. Yes, the battles are fierce. But this is exactly why you are here. You were not chosen for ease. You were chosen for significance. You were not born to drift. You were born to stand. You were not created to echo the voices of the world. You were created to release a sound that carries heaven's authority. Your existence in this critical hour is itself a testimony that you were appointed to rise, to endure, and to overcome. Even your struggles have meaning. The pain you have endured, the battles you have fought, the wounds you carry, they are not wasted. They are preparation. They have shaped you, refined you, strengthened you. They have given you compassion for others, wisdom for the journey, and resilience for the fight. What the enemy meant for destruction, heaven can use for purpose. Your scars are not a sign of defeat. They are a sign that you have survived, and survival itself is evidence that you are meant for more. There will be voices that try to distract you, temptations that try to derail you, fears that try to paralyze you. But you cannot afford to surrender to them. This is the most critical hour, and you cannot live it half-heartedly. The generation needs your faith. The world needs your obedience. Heaven is waiting for your yes. When you step into your calling, you release something that no one else can release. And when multiplied across countless individuals who all live in obedience, a generation can be transformed. This is why you must rise. Not because it is easy, not because it is convenient, not because it will win you applause, but because you were chosen for this. To live in this time is to bear the weight of responsibility, but also the privilege of destiny. You carry within you the potential to shift the atmosphere around you, to shape the course of lives, to contribute to a movement greater than yourself. And when the books of history are written, let it be said that in the most critical hour, you fulfilled your purpose. Even in the midst of shaking, faith, prayer, and obedience have the power to shift history and bring awakening. When the ground beneath us trembles and the structures we thought were unshakable begin to collapse, it is easy to believe that nothing can be done. It is easy to look at the storms of the world and feel powerless, as if history is being written by forces too great for us to resist. But the truth is that the greatest changes in history have rarely been brought about by kings or armies or governments. They have been brought about by men and women who dared to believe, who bent their knees in prayer, who lived lives of obedience when the world demanded compromise. In times of crisis, it has never been the size of the problem that determined the outcome. It has been the response of those who carried faith. Faith is not simply belief in something unseen. It is the force that calls forth what does not yet exist. It is the anchor that holds steady when the waves threaten to overwhelm. It is the fire that keeps burning when everything else is consumed by darkness. Faith declares that the present moment is not the final word. Faith proclaims that no matter how strong the shaking, there is a rock that cannot be moved. When a person stands in faith, they become more than an observer of history. They become a shaper of it. The world may look at them as ordinary, but heaven recognizes them as instruments of change. Prayer is the weapon that unleashes that faith into action. It is not empty words spoken into the air. It is communion with the one who holds the universe in his hands. When a man or woman prays, they are not speaking to powerlessness. They are appealing to the highest authority. Prayer reaches into realms unseen, shifts atmospheres, and brings heaven's will into the earth. Generations have been changed, nations have been turned, revivals have been ignited, and miracles have been released not because of political decrees or human strategies, but because someone prayed. In times of shaking, when human wisdom fails and human strength collapses, prayer is the lifeline that connects the brokenness of earth to the wholeness of heaven. Obedience is where faith and prayer find their fulfillment. It is one thing to believe, it is another thing to pray, but it is a deeper thing still to obey. Obedience is not always glamorous, and it is rarely easy. It means saying yes when it would be easier to say no. It means stepping out when fear whispers to stay hidden. It means living by conviction when compromise would bring comfort. But obedience is what turns prayers into action, faith into reality, and calling into destiny. When you obey, even in small ways, you align yourself with the purposes of heaven, and that alignment has power to move mountains. History bears witness to the power of faith, prayer, and obedience in the darkest hours. When empires rose and threatened to crush the faithful, there were those who prayed and saw walls fall. When societies sank into corruption, there were those who lived holy lives in quiet obedience and lit sparks of renewal that spread like fire. When the world declared defeat, faith rose up and declared victory. Again and again, the most critical hours have been transformed not by the mighty, but by the faithful. The shaking may come to weaken the structures of the world, but it cannot weaken the resolve of a heart that trusts, prays, and obeys. It may feel small when you pray in the silence of your room. It may feel insignificant when you choose righteousness in a world that mocks it. It may feel pointless when your faith seems invisible in a sea of unbelief. But heaven does not measure impact the way the world does. Heaven sees the hidden prayer as a spark that can ignite a forest fire. Heaven sees the single act of obedience as the seed of a movement. Heaven sees the faith of one as the beginning of transformation for many. What looks small to us is great in eternity, and what looks weak to the world is strong in the kingdom. The shaking itself is not the end, but an opportunity. When the ground quakes, The foundations that cannot stand will crumble, but what is true and eternal will remain. In those moments of collapse, hearts are softened, ears are opened, and people begin to seek what they once ignored. Shaking has a way of awakening, and in those awakenings, the prayers of the faithful find their fulfillment. What looked like ruin can become the soil for revival. What seemed like chaos can become the ground for reformation. What felt like loss can become the doorway to greater gain. But it requires people who refuse to retreat, who remain steadfast in faith, who continue in prayer, and who walk in obedience even when the world is falling apart. Think of the power of one faithful life. One person who believes can intercede for a city and spare it from destruction. One person who prays can set into motion a chain of events that ripple across nations. One person who obeys can release a blessing that outlasts their lifetime. If one life lived in faith can bring such change, imagine what can happen when a generation rises together with faith, with prayer, with obedience. The shaking that seems so overwhelming could become the very catalyst for an awakening unlike any the world has seen. The temptation in times of shaking is to lose heart. When we see nations divided, violence increasing, corruption spreading, and truth being trampled, it is easy to believe that nothing can be done. But the measure of faith is not how it responds in calm waters. It is how it responds in the storm. The measure of prayer is not how it sounds in times of blessing. It is how it cries out in times of desperation. The measure of obedience is not how it acts when everyone applauds. It is how it remains steadfast when no one else will stand. This is the test of the critical hour, and those who pass it will be the ones who bring transformation. The hour we live in may be critical, but it is also filled with possibility. The same shaking that threatens to destroy can also clear the way for new beginnings. The same darkness that presses in can also make the light more visible. The same uncertainty that causes fear can also stir hearts to seek what is unshakable. And in all of this, the faithful are called to rise, not because they are strong in themselves, but because they serve the one who cannot be shaken. Faith is the shield, prayer is the weapon, obedience is the path, and together they form the foundation for victory in any age. The question is not whether the world will shake. It already is. The question is not whether darkness will press in. It already has. The question is how we will respond. Will we cower in fear, or will we rise in faith? Will we give in to despair, or will we lift our voices in prayer? Will we compromise to survive, or will we obey to overcome? Every choice matters, every act counts, every step shapes the outcome. And the beauty of it all is that even in the midst of shaking, what may feel small can shift the course of history when placed in the hands of the Almighty. This is why we cannot lose hope. Faith, prayer, and obedience are not outdated relics of the past. They are the very keys to unlocking the future. They are not weak responses to overwhelming challenges. They are the most powerful weapons available to us. When everything else fails, they do not. When the world falls apart, they remain. When history seems headed toward darkness, they can turn it toward light. We are not powerless in this critical hour. We are equipped with the very things that have always changed the world. And if we choose to live by them, the shaking we endure today can give birth to the awakening of tomorrow. Though darkness grows stronger, those who stand firm in truth and light will overcome and fulfill their calling. The world we see today is one where shadows stretch farther than before, where deception seems to drown out wisdom, and where evil parades boldly without fear of being challenged. It is undeniable that darkness has grown stronger in our generation. The voices of confusion are louder, the celebration of sin more brazen, the hostility toward faith more aggressive. And yet, the presence of darkness does not mean the end of light. It means the stage is being set for light to shine more brightly. For the darker the night becomes, the more brilliant even the smallest flame will appear. Throughout history, darkness has always sought to extinguish the light, but it has never succeeded. Empires have risen with power, persecuting those who walked in truth. silencing their voices, burning their writings, even taking their lives. Yet the light endured. It spread in the hearts of the faithful. It burned in the prayers of the humble. It marched forward through the courage of the few who refused to bow. Darkness may roar loudly, but it has never been able to defeat the perseverance of light. And so it is today. What we see around us may seem overwhelming, but it is in these very conditions that those who stand firm in truth are most needed and most effective. Standing firm is not about avoiding storms, but about holding steady in the midst of them. It means remaining rooted when the winds of culture blow fiercely, when the opinions of the majority demand compromise, when fear seeks to silence your voice. Standing firm means your convictions are not swayed by popularity, your integrity is not traded for comfort, your faith is not sold for safety. It is a decision to live anchored in truth, no matter how high the waves rise. And those who choose such a stand are the ones who will overcome, not because they are strong in themselves, but because they are aligned with the one whose light no darkness can quench. It is easy to look at the growing darkness and feel powerless, to believe that nothing you do can possibly make a difference. But the truth is that one life committed to standing firm can become a beacon of hope for countless others. One voice speaking truth can cut through the fog of lies. One act of courage can inspire a movement. One life lived faithfully can ripple across generations. What seems small in your eyes may be great in heaven's eyes. You may not realize it, but your choice to remain steadfast could be the very thing that strengthens another to rise. You may never know how far the impact of your stand reaches, but it is never wasted. Darkness grows stronger by feeding on fear and compromise. When those who know the truth shrink back, when they hide their light, when they allow lies to go unchallenged, darkness advances unchecked. But when even one person stands with boldness, fear loses its grip and compromise loses its power. That is why your stand matters. To stand firm is not just about your own life. It is about the lives connected to yours, your family, your community, your generation. These are influenced by whether you choose to be a light in the midst of growing shadows. To overcome does not mean you will never face opposition. In fact, the stronger the darkness becomes, the greater the opposition will be against the light. You may be misunderstood, criticized, mocked, or even persecuted. But overcoming is not measured by the absence of struggle. It is measured by remaining faithful through the struggle. The victory belongs to those who endure, who refuse to let go of truth no matter the cost. And in the end, it is not the persecutors who are remembered for their triumphs, but the faithful who are remembered for their endurance. There is a deep strength that comes from knowing that your calling is not dependent on the approval of others, but on the one who called you. If you live for applause, then you will fall when the crowd turns against you. If you live for acceptance, then you will crumble when rejection comes. But if you live for truth, if your heart is anchored in light, then nothing can uproot you. You can walk through the fire and not be consumed. You can face the storm and not be destroyed. You can endure the night knowing that morning will come. This is the promise to those who stand firm. They will overcome, not by might, not by power, but by the strength of the one who goes before them. The growing darkness is not just a threat, it is also an opportunity. When the world is saturated in confusion, clarity shines brighter. When lies are everywhere, truth becomes more powerful. When despair is rampant, hope becomes a lifeline. When hatred increases, love becomes revolutionary. What the enemy intends for harm can become the very backdrop against which the glory of God is revealed. The hour of greatest darkness can also be the hour of greatest awakening, if only there are those who will hold their ground and let the light within them shine without fear. Your calling is not diminished by the rise of darkness, it is defined by it. You were not chosen to live in a time of ease, but in a time of challenge. Because it is in challenge that callings are proven. The very reason you are here in this hour is because your light was meant for this kind of darkness. If you were meant for easier times, you would have been born in easier times. But the fact that you are alive today means you have been equipped for today. The one who called you has given you everything you need to overcome, to fulfill your purpose, and to be a beacon of truth in a world that has lost its way. Standing firm does not mean you will never feel fear. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear dictate your actions. Standing firm does not mean you will never feel weak. Strength is not the absence of weakness, but the choice to rise even when you feel broken. Standing firm is not about being perfect. It is about being faithful. It is about showing up day after day, choosing truth over lies, light over darkness, conviction over compromise. And in that faithfulness, even if it feels unnoticed, heaven declares victory. The days ahead may not get easier. In fact, the shaking may increase, the confusion may deepen, the darkness may grow thicker. But this is the very environment in which light shines brightest. And the promise is sure. Those who stand firm will overcome. Not some, not most, but all who remain steadfast in truth will see the fruit of their endurance. They will fulfill the calling placed upon their lives. They will not only survive the darkness, they will outlast it, and their light will continue to shine long after the shadows have passed away. The world may believe the darkness is winning, but it is only because they have forgotten the nature of light. Darkness has no power in itself. It only exists where light is absent. The moment light enters, darkness flees. It cannot resist, it cannot argue, it cannot stand against it. And so it will be in this generation. If those who carry light stand firm, darkness cannot prevail. If those who know the truth refuse to bow, lies cannot reign. If those who are called live faithfully, the schemes of the enemy cannot endure. You may feel small in the face of it all, but never underestimate what a single light can do in the midst of darkness. A candle may seem weak, but in a pitch black room it becomes a guide, a hope, a lifeline. And when many candles burn together, darkness is completely overwhelmed. You are that candle. You are that light. And when you stand firm, you join with others across the world who are also refusing to bow. Together, the light grows stronger, and together the darkness is overcome. So let the darkness grow as it will, for it cannot outshine the light. Let the lies spread as they may, for they cannot silence the truth. Let the battles rage as they must, for they cannot defeat those who endure. The promise stands unbroken. Those who remain steadfast will overcome. They will see their calling fulfilled. They will stand in the end not as victims of the times, but as victors who triumphed in the most critical hour. And though the world may not understand, heaven will testify that they stood, they endured, they overcame, and they shined with a light that no darkness could put out. We are living in the most critical hour, and the choices we make today will echo into eternity. The world is shaking, truth is under attack, and darkness presses in on every side. But this is not the time to shrink back in fear. This is the time to rise in faith. You were not born by accident. You were placed in this very moment, chosen for this very hour.